Welcome to Equipping the Corps. Today is a very special day in Equipping the Corps history as we welcome our first ever return guest, Colonel Tim Hough. Colonel Hough is the program manager for Advanced Amphibious Assault, and he and his team are leading the development and fielding efforts for the Amphibious Combat Vehicle, or ACV, the Corps' next generation vehicle designed to move Marines from ship to shore. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. I don't know if you're just at the bottom of the barrel and you're struggling to get someone new or get anybody in here and you had to scrape at the bottom of the barrel and you got me. But I do think you should institute a jacket. So if you watch Saturday Night Live, the 5 Timers Award, if you've been on Saturday Night Live 5 times, you get a jacket.
Does this mean you'll come back another 3 times?
I'll come back anytime you want. I love to talk to people, and I get a lot of energy from it. And if I'm not talking to somebody, I'm talking to myself. So
that's nice. At least,
yeah.
Do you talk back to yourself?
That's called multiple personalities are a problem. And no, not yet.
I know you were on before and you talked about ACV, but for those who may have not listened to the episode or are not sure what an ACV is, can you talk about the vehicle?
Yeah, so the Amphibious Combat Vehicle is a replacement for the Legacy Amphibious Assault Vehicle, or AAV, which was originally fielded in 1972. So it's a replacement for what is now, a 50-plus-year-old vehicle in order to provide that same level of lift and capability to bring Marines from ship to shore or shore to shore and provide what I think is, the Commandant has recently said in testimony, a service-defining capability. I think anytime you talk to folks throughout the country about what do Marines do, their first kind of mental image is World War II. So really the ability to come from ship to shore, of which the ACV and its predecessors, the AAV, all the way back to the LVT, all provide kind of that DNA of what the Marine Corps is known to be. And that is soldiers of the sea and the ability to come from the sea. So the ACV is an 8-wheeled combat vehicle, and it provides the ability to swim 12 nautical miles. It can go over 400 miles on land. It provides a stabilized remote weapon system. As well as it's comprised of a family of vehicles. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife where the personnel carrier, which is the base platform, can carry 13 Marines in the back with a crew of 3. And then from there, we start going off into different mission role variants, which we'll talk about later. Those other 3 mission role variants are the ACV-C, or Amphibious Combat Vehicle Communication, which is a replacement for the AAV-C7, which is the command and control platform. Then next in the chute is the ACV-30, which is a 30 millimeter cannon. It can carry 8 Marines in the back. And then the last kind of in the chute of development, production, and fielding is the ACV Recovery, which is a replacement for the AAV R7 or recovery variant. So we've had the AAV. We'll have had it close to 60 years by the time we divest of the last one in FY28. Really a great program in the way of what it's provided to the Marine Corps, both during, Desert Storm, OIF, and even the initial stages of OEF in Afghanistan. It's been great, but we have bled every drop of blood from that stone and gotten everything we can out of it. And it's just it got to the point that we needed to replace it. And the Amphibious Combat Vehicle was that replacement.
You mentioned the different variants of the ACV. Can you dive in deeper to each of those?
So before I dive into the variants, I'll give you kind of a top level view of where the program is, kind of what's going on in the ACV program. It is the largest ground acquisition program in the Marine Corps. So with that, certainly we get a lot of scrutiny as we should. But the program was challenged early on. We first fielded our first platoon in November of 2020, or first quarter of FY21. And that was, IOC was the first platoon, our initial operating capability. In a big program like this, you go to operational test, you do a lot of developmental testing, and you do some analysis and analyze, okay, what are those parts that we've seen kind of failures on at a high rate that we need to build an initial issue for provisioning, kind of like your Iron Mountain. What Iron Mountain do we need? What do we need to fill that Iron Mountain with, right? In order to maintain a level of readiness that's relevant for the fleet while the program office transitions that work over to Defense Logistics Agency to maintain that level of parts that's necessary, and that's based upon demand. The program was challenged really right out of the gate with a couple things as it relates to readiness that we're finally digging ourselves out of through a couple of different initiatives. But we were challenged early on, and what we saw in testing did not prove out when we started fielding the vehicle to the fleet. And there's a multitude of reasons for that, but I think high level, Marines operating the vehicle, you give them, and I've said this in the past, you give a Marine a bowling ball, one bowling ball, he'll give you two back, right? Because he broke it in half. And rightly they should, right? They're operating it in ways that were not envisioned or even tested to. And that's okay because you learn things through that. So we were exhausting the parts supply faster than we could replace it. Some of that was COVID. We didn't have a mature supply chain at the time in 21 and 22. We were challenged with transitioning those parts over to the Defense Logistics Agency because we couldn't get the necessary tech data from the OEM to provide to DLA to get an NSN or a national stock number so that they could go out and they had the drawings so they could go out and then put that out on the street for a contract and then stock it.
Would you say that that's common in acquisition, that when we go through training and then once we begin fielding, we have to sometimes go back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know that it is to the level that we saw with the ACV early on.
It's such a big program.
Yeah, frustratingly, there's always the comment, well, you're going to learn things with a new program. And that's certainly true. But we as program managers need to try to cover down on every unknown to prevent some of that. We had to work with the OEM, and really we submitted a withhold letter to withhold money from them until they could provide us that information. And that's what it took, unfortunately, to get to that point, to get the information that we needed that was required already per the contract. So in any case, that aside, we do have that. We're moving towards that. So it was really trying to get that necessary technical data and the drawings to be able to provision it, but also an immature supply chain. So we as the program office established an interim contract support contract with the OEM in order to just buy a massive amount of parts to maintain sufficient readiness, because really where that readiness impacts is if the Marines can't operate the vehicle because they're always broken, then their level of proficiency is going to suffer. And so that's kind of the other side of the program. And let me back up real quick on the parts piece. The other thing, the other areas we saw is, the ACV is a modified land-based vehicle that's modified for amphibious operations. It was an Italian vehicle that BAE partnered with a company called Iveco in Italy, and they modified for amphibious operations. So we're learning a lot because of that. And so we were challenged early on with things like shocks, right? And so shocks going into the ocean were failing because the sand was getting inside of it and causing failures. You step back from it and go, well, why didn't you test that? Well, we did test it, but we didn't see the failures at the high rate that we saw post fielding. So we established, we modeled an effort that NavAir was executing. They call theirs the Reliability Control Board. We at the program office stood up what we call the Readiness Control Board, and that's where we take the top 10 readiness drivers, those that impact readiness the most in the fleet. And then we just start doing root cause analysis, establishing paths forward and solutions, and then get those out to the fleet in order to improve their readiness overall. So that's kind of the readiness piece as an overview of the ACV program. Okay. The other side is proficiency.
Yes.
So when you go from a 1972 armored Winnebago that is the AAV to a 21st century 8-wheel digital platform, there's some things that Marines just aren't accustomed to when it comes to operating that vehicle. The Marine Corps is very good at operating a tracked vehicle, a 26-ton tracked vehicle. We had no knowledge base within the assault amphibian community of operating an 8-wheeled, and wheeled being key, amphibious platform.
They drive differently.
They handle differently. Their centers of gravity are different. And so early on, there were some learning curves. There was a recognition by the service that we needed to go back and look at how are we training Marines. And we need to improve that training across different stakeholders. Up until really this year, the smartest people on the ACV and how to operate are lieutenants and below. there is a very much a gap from that company commander, captain level, all the way through the 05 battalion commander level with respect to how does this truly operate? And so we've really worked hard on increasing the proficiency and working with Headquarters Marine Corps, working with the fleet, and we've done that across a myriad of efforts. One is the Marine Corps stood up what's called the Transition Task Force. Within that, they identified some areas that we needed to fix. One is we needed to go back and look at our OpNet, which is our new equipment training, and we needed to revise that. The program office owns that. We went back and did that. We expanded the length of the OpNet course, or Operators New Equipment Training is what that's called, as well as our field level maintenance new equipment training to include theory, like how does it work, right? How does this work so Marines have a better understanding of, okay, how does this work? If this happens, what do I do? Rather than just kind of rote pull place for parts or limited number of runs within new equipment training.
It's different to know, I know how to operate and drive this vehicle versus why is it doing what it's doing?
Right.
So if you have that background knowledge, it helps a lot more.
Absolutely. And the other area that at least the operators net course expanded is just on the number of kind of repetitions, surf zone transits, number of repetitions on land, and which expanded the course to provide a little bit more proficiency coming out of that course. Now, we only train a basically licensed Marine. It is then on the unit to take those Marines and provide them kind of some space to go build that proficiency as a unit on their own before they're ready for tasking from the division.
How does licensing work?
We will go through an entire POI or period of instruction, and once they've successfully executed those tasks, then they'll receive a license.
Okay.
And should they not be able to do the surf zone transit because of decisions within the Marine Corps that limits certain things like surf zone transits, they'll get a partial license. And then when we are able to go through the surf zone, we'll go back and train them in that and give them that full license. Okay. Some other areas that we increased proficiency was at the schoolhouse. The schoolhouse created a pure ACV period of instruction before they were challenged with trying to teach the AAV and the ACV at the same time with limited manpower. They have since divorced those two courses, expanded the number of Marines at the schoolhouse and the length of that course at the schoolhouse in order to build that proficiency. And then finally, what I think is critical is, the Marine Corps, I think, has recognized that the assault amphibian community, as I often say, we do two things in the Marine Corps that are dangerous: fly aircraft and amphibious operations. And we have not really given the attention to that second half as it relates to assault amphibian operations and transiting the surf zone as maybe we should have, because up until 2015, we had 45 plus years of operating this vehicle. And so when we introduced a new vehicle, I think it exposed some areas where maybe we weren't so proficient. And so they stood up what's called a transition training unit, again, in the same vein as our aviation brethren. What that is the TTU, what they do is they took every Marine that had been licensed and then recertified them through a series of tasks to make sure that they could demonstrate they were proficient in executing those tasks. And if they couldn't execute those tasks, they were given a couple tries to demonstrate that. And then if not, they were redesignated into a different MOS.
Okay.
And so it really brought, I think, a level of rigor and discipline into the assault amphibian community. We've established what's called an assault amphibian or AA TOPS. It's kind of like the NATOPS. And what that did is it created a Marine Corps order for how to operate the ACV. If you violate that, certainly there's ramifications, where up until a couple of years ago, we just had SOPs. I think what I'm getting at in all this is between readiness and proficiency, we've injected a significant amount of rigor from the commandant on down into professionalizing the MOS and increasing the level of effort to get the readiness side right, both in transitioning parts over to DLA, but as well as really doing deep dives on what are those major drivers that are reducing readiness to improve that said readiness so that Marines can operate the vehicle and you can deploy with it.
We love all the information.
If anybody's still listening at this point, it's going to get juicier here in a minute, I promise you.
Going back to the parts, I know with some of our vehicles and our systems, we've looked at 3D printing. Mm-hmm. Do you think that will ever be an option for ACV in the future?
Yeah, I think in some areas it will be. Maybe not. I don't see that writ large, but I do believe there are opportunities. And we've worked within the 3D space, really just kind of at like fasteners.
Yeah.
We created a bracket for what's called the Halligan tool, which helps in egress should you be in the surf zone, and disabled and upside down. So we created a bracket for that from 3D printing. I don't see it large scale, but who knows? I mean, 20 years from now, we could be. But, it just depends. I think what limits additive manufacturing is scale and speed.
Yes.
At the point of need. And so, yeah, we've looked at it. We've worked through some little applications, but certainly we're open to doing it where we can.
Okay, let's go back to the different variants.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I blew through that. So the ACVC or command and control variant, the first 3 production vehicles were just delivered to the government. We conducted the FOT&E in FY22. And when we finished the follow-on operational test and evaluation, what I think is key to understand for the ACV program, unlike other major programs, every variant is an ECP or an engineering change proposal.
Okay.
So why that's key is in most other programs where you have multiple variants, you would have to do a new start on each different variant, which creates a lot of time to get through the process and the oversight to ultimately field that vehicle.
It's going all the way back to the beginning.
Right. So Secretary Gertz, when he was the ASN RDA, along with the service, had made a decision that the base vehicle is the base vehicle, the ACVP, and every variant after that is an ECP or an engineering change proposal, which enables us to go very, very fast to continually design, develop, produce, and field, which I think is also important to understand. Like, we are in every phase of the acquisition horse blanket right now. We are in design and development. We are in production, we're in fielding, we're in sustainment, and we're also in divestment and disposal. So going back to the ACVC, we're in production at the ACV. We're still in production at ACVP, but the ACVC is obviously the command and control variant. When we finished the FOT&E, while it met the requirements, it didn't meet the needs of the fleet and where they were going with command and control.
Okay.
So what we tested was very much a radio-centric command and control platform. We took the post-testing comments from the fleet seriously that they were a more data-centric command and control. The Marine Corps pivoted, PMAAA pivoted very quickly, and we identified beyond line of sight antennas that you could execute command and control on the move now, as well as we integrated network on the move into the ACVC. So between those two, it was critical. And then we also enabled both SIPR and NIPR, workstations. It's 6 workstations within the vehicle for the battle staff, which is that supported battalion, infantry battalion. So that's the ACVC. We took 3 of those. They're integrating those updates to the command and control system at Nywick Lant right now. We'll deliver those to the fleet on the West Coast in March.
Okay.
So that's a big win for us in that we were able to pivot pretty quickly. And I think we were able to demonstrate that, you can move fast, when you use mature technology that's already out there and you have an integrator that's able to move very quickly. So the next in line is the ACV 30. So we are taking delivery. Actually, we took delivery of yesterday of the ACV 30 production representative test vehicles. So when we go into design and development, the OEM, our industry partner, they developed 3 what we call production representative test vehicles. And that does 2 things. It enables us to take those 3 and go do developmental testing and operational testing. It also proves out and exposes where they need to improve their manufacturing processes when we go into full rate production for that variant.
Is it kind of like a prototype vehicle?
Kind of, but it's less prototype, more like that is the mature design. That's why we call it production representative.
Versus a prototype.
Right, right. And in fact, we'll take 2 of those vehicles more than likely and refurbish them and field those to the fleet because they are production representative.
Okay.
That has a 30 millimeter cannon with a 240 coax on it. And what's important to know about that vehicle is when we begin fielding it, it'll be the largest weapon system on the battlefield to support the infantry scheme and maneuver within the ground combat element. So a hugely important and huge improvement to lethality and capability for the ground combat element is that ACV-30. The AA community has never had a 30 millimeter, so this is going to be a learning experience for both proficiency, MOS, et cetera. But it has a range that's double what they have now with respect to the remote weapon station and a 50 cal. It can see probably 3 or 4 times farther than what they have now. So it's a huge capability for the Marine Corps. So we're going to go into developmental testing this year.
Okay.
And then we'll do operational testing in February and March of next year. All while concurrently we're negotiating a production contract with the OEM. And then the final one, which is probably the most critical, is the ACV recovery. And it provides field level maintenance as well as the ability to recover a vehicle and pull it back to the rear to either fix it or bring it back on ship. That right now is in design development. We're finishing up our last design development contract with the OEM that will produce 3 production representative test vehicles.
Okay.
That is, we'll go into developmental testing in FY25 and then operational testing in FY27 or 26, excuse me. And then we'll start delivering those in FY27 and 28. And I think it's important to note for the ACV, it's built to support the 7 MEUs. You know, we look forward to supporting those MEUs. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it provides flexibility for that MEU commander to use certainly, you know, the ocean and the maritime space as maneuver space to both land and continue and seamlessly transition to inland objectives and land-based operations in support of the infantry. As well as redeploy back to naval shipping and to go on continue operations.
So will each MEU get each of the variants of the vehicle? Is that how it, okay.
Yeah, so a platoon supports a MEU. So a platoon will be attached to a battalion landing team.
Okay.
Generally supports a reinforced rifle company. And they will have all 4 variants made up. They'll have the ACVP, they'll have an ACVC, they'll have 6 ACV-30s, and then they'll have an ACV-R. So it's a wide mix of vehicles to make up that MEU platoon. It's a lot of responsibility for a young lieutenant to take out a MEU and do what they need to do. But it's exciting. It's fun.
The ACV-R, I just want to call it the tow truck of the
it's
ACV.
Like the tow mater of the ACV. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great capability, and I think once we get that fielded, it'll provide certainly much needed relief because the AAV R7 will be the last vehicle divested of, and the reason we're hanging on to that one is because of the schedule for the ACV-R.
We talked about training a little bit ago, but can you talk about other aspects of training and if you work with TCOM and how that process works?
Yeah, we do. We have recently worked with TCOM. And we've recognized, certainly as a community and as a service, we've recognized that, hey, we need to figure out how to train and get more reps and sets in, even when, you know, we're not, we can't get the Marines out into the training environment. So one area, going back to the proficiency piece, we went and rapidly developed a driver trainer simulator.
Okay.
So in March of FY23, we officially received that tasking. And by November, we had already selected a vendor to go into a production contract. Really, within 7 months, we were able to move very, very rapidly. And the way we got to that was through an OTA, which I know everybody has heard about an OTA. But a couple of things we did was, one, we used an OTA, which enabled us to move very quickly. And 2, we fully resourced our team within PMAAA. And then more importantly, we told them, no one will tell you no except for the program manager. I'm not trying to make this about myself, but I looked at the team and I said, if anybody tells you no, come talk to me, because the only one that's going to tell you is me. And the reason I say that is, if you want things to move quickly, you have to reduce a lot of bureaucracy. And there has to be a whole of organization focus on getting them what they need to move quickly. I think we saw that with MRAP as a case example. But for this team, they moved very quickly. And the OTA also enabled us to reach out to non-standard, quotes, industry partners. So we worked with one really kind of long-standing industry partner who had been in the defense industry, and then one who had never been in the defense industry. In fact, a lot of their folks who worked for them. And ultimately, they were the partner that was chosen in the OTA to move forward into the production contract. They had worked on the CGI for Life of Pi. So that was important, that the movie Life of Pi. So that was important for us. It was important for them too, as they started to develop the model or the physics model to accurately represent the ocean environment. And they used a lot of what they knew from that experience and applying that to the Marine Corps. Also, what it got us was the latest and greatest software gaming engine. So we were using a gaming engine called Unreal. And when we started to develop using it in the development, it had only been out for 3 or 4 months. So it was at the very bleeding edge of technology. And also working with a small company like that who never did, they were very agile and moving. And that's kind of the third and final piece, I think, that we utilized to move quickly was we set up a series of limited user evaluations with the operators.
Okay.
We did about 3 of them, and it was an iterative process. We brought our industry partners that were involved in the OTA. They sat with the Marines. They had their solutions for the Marines out there. The Marines would go through them. They'd give them feedback. They would go back, refine, do it again. And then it finally was a fly-off, for a lack of a better word, at a final user evaluation where the Marines went through. They provided surveys, as well as across some other metrics that we used to analyze who was best of breed in order to pick. So happy to report within a year, we'll be start fielding 81 driver trainer simulators that can be deployed on a MEU to provide Marines the ability to increase their proficiency through both land driving with the simulator and then most importantly, driving within the ocean, but to naval shipping and back.
Okay.
And it's got a 2 degree of freedom chair that moves with you, as well as you wear VR goggles. So a Marine is fully immersed in that. And then what's most importantly, it gives you the opportunity when you're done, your trainer, your fellow Marine who is a trainer can run you through an after action and you can watch your video of you actually executing those tasks.
So you can look back and see, oh, I need to do this next time or do that. Yeah,
absolutely. Because otherwise you wouldn't be learning where you did wrong. And then what the Marine can do is just jump back in the chair, refine what they did in order to increase proficiency. Now it can never replicate real time, but it can certainly gives you the reps and sets of where your hands should be at that right time when you're executing those tasks. So huge win.
I'm assuming that your team also worked with PM Tracis on acquiring that, or did you do it through your team completely?
So we had a member from PM Tracis on our team.
Okay.
To provide access to some of their industry partners they knew. We had someone from TCOM on our team to help provide some of the understanding with respect to training and learning.
Okay.
But the preponderance of that effort, 95% of that effort was a small little team of a major, a very talented civilian, a couple of civilians, and a captain running very hard with a task to just get it done by the end of the year.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's eye-watering for me to watch what they did and how they were able to do it pretty quickly and deliver a really cool system to Marines.
And I feel like we don't think about how gaming ties into air quotes, into the training that we do in the Marine Corps, but it's critical.
I think it's important to recognize that today's Marine doesn't learn the same way that, like, even when I came in. Another area that at least I'm pretty proud of as a program manager is we stood up the PMAAA website. I had done this previously when I was at Infantry Weapons. We stood up a website, but we used really kind of a gaming type look that, if you go on Call of Duty, you can click that weapon, this person, this equipment, and you can learn about it. Additionally, there's videos on there. We can also hang the most recent technical manuals, the most recent safety of use messages. So Marines can access it from anywhere, so long as they have a CAC, it's CAC enabled. They can access it from anywhere, and any Marine, not just assault amphibian, can access the PMAAA website to get all the most relevant data, videos on how to do things. We've contracted with smart guides on how to operate the ACV, how to maintain the ACV. That is all loaded on there in order to provide a learning experience that meets today's Marine. And so those two areas, super proud of, along with just a host of other things that we've done, I think, over the past 2 years in a pretty challenging environment. But that website and the driver trainer simulator, I would say, are pretty huge wins for PMAAA and honestly for the AA community and for the Marine Corps.
Yeah, because this generation, as we know, we can just go on the internet and look up how we can teach ourselves anything for the most part.
YouTube, I think, has changed the way people learn because rather than, and this isn't an indictment on young Marines today, is Marines just don't read technical manuals like they used to because that's all you had. We're fielding the mag tab to AA Marines, and we're going to put the website on there, an application for the website on there so that you can cache any material if you're forward and you have those videos resident. But Marines, I think today learn more, they're more visual. Even my young kids today, I mean, their face is stuck in that phone and it's a 20-second to 45-second clip that they're ingesting, and that's the limit of it. So if we can meet that, need in that environment, we're going to meet how they learn to hopefully pick up things quicker. I think kids today pick up things a lot faster, right, wrong, or indifferent, how they interpret it. But yeah, I agree with you that how they learn is different.
Yeah, I just need to see the math problem worked out on the board, and then I can do it. Not that I've had to do any math problems recently, but
same.
That's what it makes me think about.
Yeah, I agree.
You've been working in acquisition for a little while now.
Yeah.
Is there any advice that you would give a Marine that's considering moving into acquisition?
Just by way of background, so I first started in acquisitions in 2008, which is 16 years ago. And I started at MACATIA, which is the Marine Corps Operational Test and Evaluation Activity, which is an independent operational test activity that, ensures that the systems we're fielding are operationally effective and suitable. It really applies to a lot of bigger programs or special interest programs. I think for me, that was arguably the best billet I had getting into acquisitions. I was the branch head for the operational test of the EFE. So this has all come full circle for me. And we used to work with PMAAA. And so it gave me the opportunity to learn the importance of testing, both developmental and operational, and why it is important in the way of proving out the issues and fixing the issues before they get to Marines where we can. It made me understand the importance of resources and how finite they are and the challenges a program manager has to try to apply those resources appropriately so that he can meet the demand or she can meet the demands of cost control performance. It was a vital billet for me to understand and cut my teeth in a very large program and then understand acquisitions kind of at that level. The advice I would give Marines is this, right? It really comes down to what is it you want to get out of your experience in the Marine Corps?
Yeah.
When I was kind of hemming and hawing about whether to become an acquisition Marine, I just come out of a combat tour as a company commander, as an Amtrak company commander. I had my own area of operations. I had infantry attached to me. So I was a reinforced AA company commander with my own AO. It doesn't get any better than that for an AAV company commander. That is an anomaly that I was supremely fortunate to experience with a lot of good people. I had a great first sergeant, Jason Simmons, great ops chief, Tom Bohr, and a lot of just good Marines. But I say that in that it really challenged me as to what did I want to do with. I was at the 10-year mark of my career, and I had always dreamed of being a battalion commander within the AA community. That was my dream. Ultimately, after 2 years of hemming and hawing, I kind of stepped back and I said, okay, what level of impact do I think I'll have as a battalion commander if I were fortunate to ever get selected for that? And what level of impact do I think I'm going to have as a acquisition officer should I be able to stick around for that long? Because it was shocking I was still around at that point. So I really recognize there is a very much an outsized role that young officers in the acquisition MOS have on the impact, outsized impact that acquisition officers have on the service.
Yeah.
Right? Not at the unit level. I'm talking at the service. And it's not just a small couple of years at a time. You could have generational impacts that will be felt long after you've retired. And so for me, that was exciting. So that was kind of one advice for, if you want to have huge impact in the Marine Corps. I'll give you an example. I have a major who just became an acquisition officer, former Amtracker, ridiculously smart, Major Ryan Spangler. He is our ACV 30 team lead. He is leading $1.5 billion program, right?
A huge program.
Huge program, right? And a massive program. And he is the point man for that. And so, what I would offer is his impact to the Marine Corps will outlive, could even, it certainly will outlive his time in the Marine Corps. So there's that, right? Two, if you like to be challenged, if you like just really hard work, this is the MOS for you.
Do it.
If you just want hard, difficult work that requires, a level of thinking on a 3D chessboard that if I move this pawn, what's going to happen on the other chessboard 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and how do I impact that, right? So it's very difficult, complex, where every decision you make can have positive or negative impacts that you maybe didn't see. It's almost like choose your own adventure, right? Yeah. If you want an MOS that demands the highest levels of leadership, I would offer the acquisitions community is, and here's why. It requires you, it's not a secret, we don't work with a lot of Marines in our MOS, but we do work with a lot of capable civilians who are very, hardworking, diligent, and want to just do the right thing for Marines. We don't have direct authority, in a sense, over the folks we work for and work with. And so when I say it demands pure leadership, because you have a multitude of stakeholders that you don't have any direct control over, and you have to figure out a way to influence all of those stakeholders to believe in what you're doing and where you believe the program should go in order to meet the demands of capability for Marines. To me, that demands pure leadership to influence. Someone once told me if leadership is telling people to go to hell and they're excited about the trip.
That's a good leader.
Yeah, and acquisitions, sometimes it is hard work and it can grind you down, but you have to make people excited about wanting to do that.
Yeah.
And so those are the three things I think I would offer someone who's interested in acquisitions is if you want to have an outsized impact, if you love hard, challenging work with very smart people, which demands you to know your business and know your craft, as well as you enjoy just, honing your leadership craft, I would say pick this MOS every day and twice on Sunday.
You're making me want to join the Marine Corps and become an acquisition Marine.
I love this job. I love the constant thinking and what you're having to do. It really is fun. And you do, and I know I'm not trying to be cliche, but you get to work with a lot of smart people. And for me, I like to try to be intellectually curious. And so when you step in the room and you're not the smartest person, which is often for me,
kind of refreshing.
It's fun because you get to learn from people, right? And you get to work next to some really wicked smart people. So yeah, that's what I would offer.
Some people may already know this if they listen to the first season in your episode, but for those who don't, you're actually from Stafford, Virginia.
Yeah.
Which
kind of.
You and
I actually have something in common. So.
Oh, do we?
Yeah. So I grew up in Stafford. I call it home, but I moved there when I was 6. In 1982. But I was actually born in Mississippi, which I think you're from Mississippi. So
what part of Mississippi?
I was born in Meridian.
Okay.
Yeah. So
how does it feel to be a Mississippian?
Well, I don't know. I only lived there for like 6 months.
You're like, I was a baby.
Yeah, I don't even remember it. So I actually got the opportunity to go back to Vicksburg a couple of months ago. Yeah. And I have a childhood friend I grew up with in Stafford who lives in Meridian now. And I was trying to link up with him just to go through the town. But I have not been back. I would really like to get back though. So
what base is up in that area?
It's a naval air station. I think they used to train pilots there.
Okay.
And then from there I moved to, I think I said this in the last episode, but moved to Beaufort, South Carolina, Montgomery, Alabama. But then, I moved here in 1982 when I was 6. And Stafford was not even, no, not at all. It was a 2-lane road on 610. We lived on a dirt road for about 3 or 4 years. There was one traffic light, and there were woods from the off-ramp on 95 South going west as far as you could see. So it was Yeah, North Stafford had just been built. Now I think there's 6 high schools here, almost 7. But I live in Fredericksburg, and even that is crazy. So yeah,
it's huge, this area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Did you know that you wanted to join the Marine Corps?
No, honestly, I don't know. It's funny. I say no a lot, but I was going through some old photos recently. I'd unfortunately had a childhood friend, my next door neighbor, whose dad was a retired colonel, and he actually was a captain in the Marine Corps. Just passed away, and it was really unfortunate. But so as I was going through old photos, trying to find some photos to give to his mom and his wife and kids of just him when he was a kid, I was looking in the background of. I found some photos of like my bedroom. There was just, besides the large amount of Michael Jordan posters, there were a lot of posters of Marine F-18s, Marine infantry, old recruiting posters on the wall. So I say all that I guess I probably was always going to go in. But when I was getting near the end of my last year of college, I went to VMI. I really didn't know what I was going to do. So my first kind of going in was, I think I was going to sell pharmaceuticals. I had a cousin who sold pharmaceuticals for Abbott. And then I was like, I don't want to do that. And then I was going to go in the Peace Corps. I had the application filled out. I was all in. I just had this, romantic kind of idealism of I would go to this small village and kind of help. And, and then for whatever reason, I didn't do it. So when I graduated college, I had like no plan. And I went to the Navy recruiter. I had a pilot slot with the Navy recruiter, but they're like, well, you're going to have to wait a year before you can go in. And I didn't have any medical coverage.
You're like, what am I going to do for a year?
Yeah, well, that, and if I get hurt, how am I going to pay for it? So I went to the OSO in Ashland, Virginia, and I said, hey, I want to go in the Marine Corps. And that was kind of the start of it. So I guess long-winded, I guess I always had it in the back of my mind.
Subconsciously.
Yeah. To stay this long, I don't know that I've always kind of just been like, all right, what's the next year going to look like? But I never thought I'd be in for almost 26 years now. So,
did your dad ever push it or want it? That's such a weird way to put it.
No, I got it. Yeah. No, he didn't really push it. I know he's super proud of what I've done in the Marine Corps, but no, he never really pushed it.
He wanted you to do whatever would make you happy.
Yeah. I think he certainly recognized the benefits. I mean, I'm the benefactor of his service and all the benefits that having a parent serves in the military provides. Other than giving me a bunch of recruiting posters to put on my wall, maybe that was it. But no, he's never really pushed it.
Okay. Is your family still in Stafford?
No.
Okay.
My mom is remarried. She lives in King George. She lives right on the river. In fact, if you looked out off the banks of the river here at Quantico, you could, with a pair of binos, see her house. And so she and her husband RV everywhere. And right now, I think they're in Florida.
That's cute.
In their RV. Yeah, having a lot of fun. My dad lives in Covington, Virginia, on a gorgeous piece of property right along the Jackson River, and fly fishes. And then I have a brother who lives in Cincinnati. He's the CIO for Cintas, and he's really doing well. And then 2 sisters who are married to airline pilots for United, and they're all doing great. And they're kind of Bristow, Manassas type area, and then out in Loudoun County.
Does your brother is it Cincinnati chili? I can't remember what they call it, but out there spaghetti.
Yeah, I can't. What is the name? It's like Lone Star. No, Star Chili. Yeah, I know.
You'll have to find out and get back to me.
Yeah, I will.
That's automatically what I think of when I think of Ohio.
Yeah.
Where can we find you when you're not at work?
Yeah, you can find me on my bike. I do a lot of bike riding, but really the most time you're going to find me is either driving up and down the East Coast for my daughter who plays field hockey, travel field hockey, and then or for my son who plays travel baseball, or right here in Quantico, my son's stationed here. I have a son who is an air traffic controller. He's a sergeant.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, at the air station. He just got accepted to the MECEP program to go to OCS and be an officer. And then, with I have 5 kids. Yeah. So, yeah. It's then my other 2 daughters live in Fredericksburg as well. So I'm either on my bike or driving up and down. Kids around. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at this point. They're my youngest child is my son. He's a freshman. So, yeah. So we're kind of getting to that point. I mean, they're all...
You're busy.
It's It's just a lot of driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 95 is the worst.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, now we're to the most exciting round.
Oh, boy, here it comes.
The lightning round.
Man, I've been thinking about this. Like, what questions is she going to ask? You threw a curveball this season by not giving everybody what the questions are.
I know, because everybody would prepare. And
not a lot of lightning if you already know what's going to...
It needs to be a zinger, you know?
Yeah, I'm really nervous about this.
Okay. Football or baseball? Or basketball?
Oof. That's good. I would say baseball.
What's your team?
The Nationals.
Okay. Do you have a favorite emoji?
Oh, man. A favorite emoji. Well, I send lots of hearts to my wife. I guess the thumbs up emoji. I don't use a lot of emojis, I suppose. I do use the heart emoji for my wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Hopefully every husband or, partner uses the heart emoji.
What's your favorite duty station?
Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Your favorite TV show, book, movie, or podcast?
Okay. Book, Marcus Aurelius Meditations.
Okay.
Would be a favorite of mine. Podcast, I'll say what everybody says other than this one. I listen to Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, or Needs a Fan, rather. And then I listen to Smartless. That's with Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett. That's a good one. I listen to this. And then I listen to another one called It's a True Crime podcast. It's called Psychopedia. It's
true crime.
It's disturbing at best, but it's fascinating.
Okay. Tell me what your favorite movie is.
Oh, God, you caught me. Gladiator would be one. I actually really love that movie. Braveheart's good.
That's my family history.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we sided with England, so we're traitors.
Okay.
I know.
The top two, Dumb and Dumber and Nacho Libre. I can quote every line in Dumb and Dumber verbatim. Nacho Libre is, it's really good.
This is great. I'm really glad you came on.
I do too. And in the famous words of Nacho Libre, life is good. My life is real good. No, I appreciate you having me on, Morgan. It's been a blast. And this is always a fun podcast to listen to. It really is. What I do appreciate that you guys have done, like you've exposed a lot more people and enabled them to come on and tell their story of where do they fit into this whole, hierarchy of Marine Corps Systems Command. So that to me has been enjoyable. I think you guys have done a great job. I don't know if you're going to give it up after one season, give up the podcast chair. If that's becoming a thing.
That's how we're supposed to do it, but we got to give the fans what the fans want.
And they want Morgan Blackstock is what they want. So, you've done a great job. Manny did a good job. Tripp did a good job. But it's been, I think, really cool to have a command podcast. Appreciate it. It's been fun.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We'll see you on season 4 and 5 and 6.
If that's a promise, I'm here.
And then you'll get a jacket.
Excellent. If I'm still around for season 6, I'll ask for the jacket. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Equipping the Corps. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcasting platform or on social media. We'd love to hear from you.